Welcome in to the Cover 5 show, where I'm your host, Jordan Vanek. You can find me over on Twitter at Jordan Vanek DFS. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Hilo at HiloFF over on Twitter. Hilo, we got a divisional round. You're coming off a huge win as a Packers fan, a total domination of the Dallas Cowboys, which I'm sure you are very happy about. How are you feeling about this divisional round 4-game slate and making this the main instead of that 6-game last week, which was not the main slate? We had two different main slates on Saturday, Sunday. Now that we have that day break in between, how will you be handling, the time in between slates, like seeing ownership and kind of gauging, oh, am I unique? How do I get different from the field if my lineup is kind of dead? How are you playing that?
Yeah, this slate has a very interesting dynamic from the sense that the last game on the slate is probably the least likely to develop into something that you had to have, being the Bills and the Chiefs. And the three parts. So the game of the week, so to speak, the game that has the best chances to develop into something that you had to have or you weren't winning anything, is that Buccaneers and Lions game. That's also where the field is going, but they're only going to the Lions side, and primarily with the three primary wide receivers. Why is that? There's some perceived certainty there, some perceived safety, because this 4-5 man rotation at wide receiver devolved into a three-person rotation. It was basically Amon-Ra St. Brown, not Khalil Shakir, Josh Reynolds and Jameson Williams playing the majority of the offensive snaps from 11 personnel for this team last week. Is Khalif Raymond going to play this week? He was out last week. We don't know. But that's kind of where the field is going for their perceived certainty, is that morning game on the Sunday slate for particularly the Lions side. And then you get these two Saturday games where they each are widespread. So they each are home team favorites, 1 seeds by more than a touchdown. I would contend that both of those games are likelier to play closer than that than not. I think that has a lot of biases from public perception that has bet those games the way that they are. The Packers are playing some pretty solid football. I mean, they've won 7 of their last 9 games to get into the postseason and then win in the wild card round. What's most interesting about that second game on Saturday, the Packers and the 49ers, is the Packers, their 2 losses were blowout losses. And that seems to be where the field is going or assuming that happens in this game. All their wins, only 2 of their 7 wins over the last 9 weeks were blowout wins. All the other wins were within a touchdown. So this game is a lot likelier to play to a tighter contested match, I think, than the field is given credit for. And when you compare, let's just compare the Green Bay wide receivers to the Detroit wide receivers, everyone's flocking to the Detroit wide receivers because there's that feeling of certainty that comes along with the snap rates there. Who's to say that doesn't change this week? And who's to say the Green Bay Packers, who used a 5 wide receiver rotation last week, who's to say that doesn't change this week? And we have a sample size of Christian Watson coming off an extended absence with a hamstring injury already this season. It's happened twice. The first time he started the season unable to play. His first game back, he played 46% of the offensive snaps. His first game back this time, he played 41% of the offensive snaps. In his second game back from injury, that first time, he was up into the 80% snap rate range. So who's to say Christian Watson jumps back up into the 80% snap rate range over Dontavian Wicks and Bo Melton? I don't know, but it's possible. So when we start thinking about the dynamics of the slate and the fact that there's blowouts Saturday, there's closer games Sunday, it starts to shape how the field is going to be approaching it. And I think that's probably a mistake. The final game, which is the first game of the slate, is that Houston Texans Baltimore Ravens game. And somebody brought up on Twitter, I forgot who it was, the fact that these 2 teams played in week 1. And sorry, my dog barking in the background. These 2 teams played in week 1, and it opened with a 9.5 Baltimore favorites. Same freaking thing this week, except we have a sample size of a likely offensive rookie of the year in CJ Stroud behind us. So I think that's probably a mistake. I think this game is likelier to play closer than that. You look at this Houston defense, what are they trying to do? They are top 2 in most metrics against the run. They're first in the league in yards allowed before contact. They're second in the league. Now my kid's screaming. This is great.
I was about to say, let's get into the Houston Baltimore game, because that's where the slate will be starting. That is where there is a 9.5-point spread, over under sitting at 43.5. These teams, like, the week one game means absolutely nothing to me. And the reason that it means absolutely nothing is because, from an identity standpoint, from a playbook standpoint, both of these teams didn't play this game like we're emptying the playbook, where we're going to be like, we know who we are going to be as an offense and a defense. Unlike the Houston side of things, you have a running back room where Devin Singletary was not playing like the lead back in the beginning of the year. It was Dameon Pierce playing. You had Tank Dell not even getting a chance to be one of the top guys on the entire slate. And for the Baltimore Ravens side of the ball, it was Todd Monken's first game calling plays with Lamar Jackson, getting that communication in. And then also in the standpoint of, I think Justice Hill had like 3 rushing touchdowns that he stole from J.K. Dobbins in that game. Like, Todd Monken called a screen pass on what felt like every other play, and it was all to Zay Flowers. Like, Zay Flowers is getting scheme touches from the jump. It was very low ADOT, but he was getting the ball in space and making some plays there. And then on the Houston side of things, like, CJ Stroud and the offensive line was a mess to begin the year. Also, playing in Baltimore wasn't exactly a great environment for him to open the season as a rookie. And then Bobby Slowick just figuring out who his team is, how his team is supposed to play. They didn't put Tank Dell in a full-time role from week one. They were Robert Woods all the way. Like, these two teams are very different than that week one matchup. And in particular, from a coverage standpoint, Baltimore, or the Houston Texans, they played a ton of cover 1, cover 3 against the Ravens. This time around, you have them playing a ton of cover 4. Like, that is the coverage that they are going to live in. And without Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson against quarters coverage is going to be a tough matchup for him. I still think the Baltimore Ravens win this game. I do agree with you that it's going to be closer. I think Mark Andrews is a huge impact, because likely wasn't winning in coverage during that season, because he was the chalk of week one, and I faded it. Didn't play Zay Flowers too much, but I was able to avoid the likely chalk. In this type of game, it's the same thing, where can he win in his matchup? Like, do they have a player they can consistently go to and win? And then on the flip side, like, I told everybody last week that I felt like Derek Stingley would shadow Amari Cooper, who
it's a good call.
Didn't, and Amari Cooper got shadowed, and Amari Cooper didn't produce as much. He obviously is dealing with injuries like he has been throughout his whole entire career. This weekend, like, Derek Stingley's not traveling. Like, who would even be the matchup to travel to? Like, what's even the point of going towards Bateman or Zay Flowers or Odell Beckham? Like, just stick Stingley on the side of the field that is probably the wide side, is what I would assume D'Amico Ryans wants, because he wants him to be in the area of the field that gets those crossers, gets those, like, he gets to make plays on the ball. And then I don't know if you saw that moment with Christian Harris and D'Amico Ryans, but man, this Texans team, like, you saw the clip?
Yeah.
Like, that type of coach, that type of environment, that type of, like, trust a player has in a coach like that, like, that's some special type stuff. And Baltimore Ravens know that. Like, the Baltimore Ravens are very, very, very familiar with a team that, like, believes in their coach, plays hard for their coach. They deal with it every single year over in Pittsburgh, where it's a team that they out talent, but they don't really ever outplay. And it's a situation where this could be a similar type of spot for them, where they're going to have to think, oh, this is the Texans, we beat them in week one. And again, it's snowing. They just showed a picture of the field. There's a bunch of snow on the seats. That'll all get probably cleared out before the game. I don't think it's going to be too bad there. It's just going to be really cold for everybody. The way I'm approaching this, when Lamar Jackson was originally getting Mark Andrews back, because he was practicing in full, I liked Lamar Jackson a lot. Now that he doesn't have him, this is a spot where I don't think I'm going to get too much from this game personally. And it's like, you can, because of the ownership of the game, it's not going to be really high. But it's, for me, it just feels like this isn't shootout. Like, the next 3 games, I could wrap my head around it being a shootout. This game is one where I just don't see it. I know Marlon Humphrey isn't playing. Mike McDonald's best part about his scheme is he's just pattern matching you. Like he's just guessing what route concepts you're using, and if he's getting it right, you're not going to be able to do anything. I expect Nico Collins to be doubled the entire game, bracketed in some way, some shape or form. So if you're going to play him, like I feel like you have to get Devin Singletary as well in your lineup, and then you're just game stacking. Like if Nico Collins is going to have a blow up game, I think the whole game does. If Nico Collins doesn't have a good game, it's probably a standpoint of nobody really gets there from a DFS perspective. How are you playing this one, Hilo?
Yeah, I think so. The fact that Devin Singletary is expected to garner the second highest ownership at the position for this 4-game slate, I think speaks volumes to the misunderstanding of who he is and what this offense is.
Mm-hmm.
You look at how he has been utilized when he has had the lead back role for this team, and he's typically seeing 22 to 25 running back opportunities when the game is close. He's typically seeing 15 to 17-ish running back opportunities when the game is not close, when it's a blowout in either direction. If this game is a blowout, that means we should not be playing Devin Singletary. That's kind of what the field is doing. They're just saying, I don't know what to think. The Vegas thinks this game's going to be a blowout. I'm just going to play Devin Singletary because he has a borderline workhorse role. It's like, well, not really in a blowout. So the way to play Devin Singletary, and I will be doing this, is to pair him with CJ Stroud, because you're saying this game is staying close. You can add Nico Collins. You can add already you're unique, because CJ Stroud, again, the likely offensive rookie of the year, is going to be like 2% owned on the slate. So like already you're unique, but to get even more and be able to just do whatever the hell you want, like play CJ Stroud with Devin Singletary and Dalton Schultz. Like what if, like you said, Nico Collins just sees the doubles? They're not going to be like John Mechie is not going to win this game for them. So if that is the case, we've seen Dalton Schultz at least twice this year see double-digit targets. He put up a 30 burger in one of those games. Went over 100 yards with a touchdown. I think like 9 or 10 receptions, something like that. So there's some interesting angles to play around with Devin Singletary. The fact that, I mean, you nailed it on the head. The fact that Mark Andrews is out for this game probably means that it plays closer than the current line is set as well. This team does not have a quarters beater. Odell Beckham is able to he's shifty within the first 5 yards of line of scrimmage. And he's able to use that veteran savvy to beat man coverage. And that's kind of how he has been utilized this season. Zay Flowers, like sub 20% targets per out run rate and sub 20% target rate against zone coverage this season. Mark Andrews was upwards of 30% targets per out run rate and team target market share against zone over the last 2 or 3 seasons. So like they're missing him is a big blow. Isaiah Likely is plenty fine, but he is not a guy that has the same level of veteran savvy as Mark Andrews. So like, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Zay Flowers? Is it going to be their run game? It's not a good matchup. It's like the worst matchup of all playoff matchups. So like, who's it going to be?
I feel like so the Houston Texans are a phenomenal run defense. Me and you were talking about that in the June about how D'Amico Ryans is a guy, like, I don't even know if they had the pieces, but the one thing that I couldn't stand from best ball people was Derrick Henry gets 2 games against the Texans. Yeah. This is the best game ever. Draft Derrick Henry. It's like, no, we don't. We got to stop using metrics from last season if the things aren't the same. Like,
yeah,
there are things that get better. Like the Detroit Lions were the worst run defense in the entire NFL for 3 years under Dan Campbell, and then they got Aiden Hutchinson, and then they got Aleem McNeil, and then they got linebackers that are just flying down, and then they got Brian Branch and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, just 2 hard-hitting nickel/safeties. It changes. Your scheme isn't going to be identical every single season, and it's flowing and adapting. And for this Houston Texans defense, they've been phenomenal against the run. Lamar Jackson, though, it's just what he does in the run game. They stopped in the first matchup. They were able to limit that. However, it is Lamar Jackson still. Like, I think Gus Edwards is going to be the guy in DFS that's going to frustrate me this weekend, because there's the chance that he just gets a 50-yard rushing game, but he scores 3 touchdowns. And also the fact that they made Dalvin Cook active to their 53-man roster. That tells me that, like, I'm gonna say it right now. I think there's a good chance that the first snap the Ravens take, Dalvin Cook's out there.
Yeah.
He's only going to play like 25% of the snaps, but he has scripted run plays. He has scripted situations that he's familiar with and comfortable with. And if you told me who was the better, like if the Ravens signed Dalvin Cook in the offseason, like obviously if J.K. Dobbins was not playing, I think J.K. would have been looked at as the top guy. But if you told me the backfield was Justice Hill, Gus Edwards, Dalvin Cook, I think we all would have been like, I think Dalvin's the lead back.
Yeah.
Like we saw the Texans in this first matchup with the Ravens. Like the Ravens had 4 running backs get 8 carries, I think. It was like Dobbins, Lamar, Justice Hill, and Gus Edwards all had like 6 to 8 carries. Maybe Gus Edwards might have been hurt during that time, but I remember all these guys just getting like enough carries. So Lamar, for me, obviously the run defense of the Texans is great. They can stop any, like they can keep up with it. They got the athletic linebackers, but Lamar just adds a different dimension that it's possible they run it effectively, but it's just not anybody that's going to get the volume needed, like to be GPP viable. So
concur.
That's all I got for that game. Do you have anything you'd like to add? I mean, the Texan side, it's simple. It's just you could go Stroud, you do it, you get Nico, and you probably play Devin Singletary too, because all 3 are needed to put up points in that matchup.
Yep.
Got it. So
Texans money line. Let's go.
Oh geez, you're
let's
crazy
go.
there, man.
That's Stroud magic.
Let's go forward to another player who had a very magical performance. Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers taking on the 49ers. This game's got a 50.5 point over under. Obviously, the 49ers are big favorites. These teams have met up. It feels like they're just we would be talking about these teams like meeting up so often as we do with the Chiefs and the Bills if these teams just had both good quarterbacks. Like both quarterbacks, like of Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, where it's like these guys are battling. Like you guys, I feel like, have matched up with the 49ers so many times over the last 4 years with LaFleur. You guys are so familiar with what you want to do. When I was looking back at the previous matchups with Joe Barry as your play caller, you guys run 2 coverages. You try your hardest to play quarters. You want to play quarters and keep things in front of you and give them like you want your 5-man front to win against their offensive line. And then it doesn't. Because they just find ways to run the ball effectively. I mean, they beat you in a game where they threw 9 passes in the NFC Championship. And it's like, okay, once that starts breaking down, you guys go cover 1 and just man up. And then once Kyle Shanahan sees man coverage, he's like, perfect. I have a bunch of people who could beat that. So we're just going to run those guys. And then you have Jair Alexander with some injuries. So it's one of those things where the 49ers are the key to the slate to me. Is McCaffrey going to have the ceiling game? Or is it going to be 2 of like Kittle, Ayuk, Debo? Like they can spread it out, but it just feels like from a matchup perspective, if the Packers have to go man coverage, then Brandon Ayuk and Kittle have advantages in that area of the field. If the Packers are just going to play their zone, like heavy cover 4, and they're somehow stopping McCaffrey, then Deebo Samuel has to be the guy for this team. How are you treating the 49ers offense? Because for me, it's like you play Christian McCaffrey, you double stack Brock Purdy, or you find yourself with 2 of Deebo, Ayuk, and Kittle.
I think the most interesting thing for me is to pair Deebo with Christian McCaffrey without Brock Purdy on the slate.
That makes sense.
Why? Yeah, and I like
it.
If you look, the question that we need to ask with this San Francisco team is not like, are they going to score? It's who's going to score, who's going to have the production. And when we get these matchups where we know kind of what the defense is going to be doing, with Joe Barry, it's more soft zone. And that kind of plays into a boost to the expectation for those 2 guys, for Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel. I would also, based on the like who those 2 players are and what they are to this offense, I would not be surprised to see this San Francisco 49ers team score 4 or 5 touchdowns, and 3 or 4 of them are to those 2 guys. I would not be surprised to see 3 rushing scores between those two guys. Like Deebo Samuel is involved in the red zone. Typically outside of the 10 is where he sees most of his carries, but he's been highly effective at punching it in from 10, 12, 14 yards out. So I would not, that directly takes away from Brock Purdy as well. So that's the most interesting way to play this game for me, is adding Deebo Samuel, who is coming in like below George Kittle, below Brandon Ayuk in expected ownership, and pairing him with Christian McCaffrey, playing Christian McCaffrey, but doing it in a way that Field is not.
That is a super unique, like, I completely agree with that. That is a definitely awesome way to do it. I still think you can get unique with like playing Ayuk and Kittle without Purdy, which obviously Purdy should get to there to some aspect. But if you just look at the quarterbacks on the slate, like Purdy can throw for 260 and 3 touchdowns and not even be close to the highest scoring quarterback, just because of the rushing ability of everybody else. And also I mean, from a ceiling perspective, like I think Baker Mayfield can get there through the air, similar to Brock Purdy at a cheaper cost, and carry some of their guys. And regardless, you can get unique is what I'm getting at. I still think the 49ers are the team that you need to get unique with. And then for me with the Packers offense, I think it's another game for Dobbs. Like I don't get I don't get how played Jaden Reed is. I don't think that's the path for this offense to be like Jaden Reed gets dubbed as the mini Deebo Samuel. If you guys try to just go 2-yard passes up the field against the 49ers, they're going to eat you alive. Like that is what they want. They are physical. They are a team that you beat by pushing them down the field. Like Mahomes wasn't throwing screen passes in the Super Bowl to Tyreek Hill. He was launching it down the field to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, because that is the path to being an effective team like that. So for me, what are we going to get coverage wise? We're going to get cover 4. We know that the 49ers are probably going to rush 4 against you because they're going to trust that their all defensive line is going to be able to get through your offensive line. And I think you guys are going to flip and say, we're going to go 12. We're going to have a leak out from the running back. We're going to have a leak from the tight end, but we're going to chip, and we're going to have 2 receivers really running routes. And Dobbs, man, last week, like that's not a fluke. What he was doing to those Dallas defensive backs hadn't been done to them all season long. Yeah. And I was very impressed with him as a route runner. And on the season, he has like a 40% target share against quarters. Like he is your go-to for quarters coverage. And the 49ers play it at the highest rate. They're like Steve Wilkes is like, let me try to be cute and play cover 1 and blitz. And that wasn't working. And they were like, probably had a team meeting of like, hey, let's go back to what we did last year, because now we have Chase Young. And have you seen the pressure rate of that front 4 with Young, Hargrave, Armstead, and Bosa out there?
Yeah, it's stupid. That's going to be one of the key matchups in this game.
Oh, yeah. No, if they get pressure with 4, it's going to be very difficult. But I've seen enough off-platform throws from Jordan Love and like throws where he knows he's getting drilled that dude he's just good. Like I hate you because you just never have had a bad quarterback in your entire life, like your lifetime. Seriously. You just don't get those. But overall, the only thing I'll say else about the Packers offense, I don't see it with Aaron Jones at all. I don't think he can run effectively because the 49ers aren't going to play a 200-pound safety at middle linebacker. They have linebackers that aren't going to run away from the run. They're going to go and just blitz you. And we've seen the Cowboys get like punished in the run game this year. Like we saw James Conner just dominate him. So Aaron Jones doing what he didn't shock me like at all. Kind of like it was like, they just can't defend the run. And you guys also said we're taking the ball, we're going right down the field, and we're scoring on an 8-minute drive. That's not going to happen in San Fran. So for me, Dobbs, I don't mind Wicks. I love Christian Watson. I do think you're right on the snap count going up for him. Wicks is a guy that, like, I don't think Jaden Reed is going to be seeing the field a ton personally. Like, he's a guy that last week he didn't play much, and that was weird to me. Like, is he I know he was on the injury report. I believe his ribs and stuff, but like, well, that's a weird guy to leave off the field to me over Wicks. And also Dontavian Wicks just killing Stephon Gilmore in
Yeah, that was great.
one-on-one situation. Fantastic. And also, I'll give my flowers to Matt LaFleur. What Matt LaFleur has done with you guys is just remarkable. Like, I did not expect you guys to have the year you've had. This is one of those years where I mean, as a Packers fan, you have to be like, we have our quarterback. We have 5 receivers, like, or 4 receivers that like you genuinely don't care. Like, whoever's on the field, we're good. We can win. And your tight ends are sick too. Like your draft class this year was just, you didn't miss. And hopefully you just find someone else on the defensive side of the ball. I think if San Fran ends up throttling you guys, that would probably be the best thing to happen to you guys, because you probably find your way off of Joe Barry and into one of the more Vic Fangio schemes, maybe a D'Amico Ryan's assistant on the Texans, like somebody out there to be able to fill that DC role in Green Bay. Hilo, how are you playing this Packers offense?
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it. I think I kind of alluded to it in the opening. I would say it is probably more likely that one of these Packers wide receivers finds their way on the optimal roster over one of the cheap Detroit guys. Christian Watson is currently my favorite. And that's because like I expect him to see the highest room to grow into the offense moving forward.
Yeah.
That would likely come at the expense of Dontavian Wicks and Bo Melton. So I don't know how that's going to shake out, but like any one of these 5 guys, I would be sprinkling through rosters this weekend. I think that if the Packers are going to find some level of offensive success, it's going to be one of these 5 wide receivers. Like you said, not a good spot for Mr. Aaron Jones. With or without A.J. Dillon, it's not a good spot. So the crux of this like Packers game plan has to come down to the offensive line's ability to subdue or at least slow down the pass rush of the 49ers, because we're probably going to find ourselves in some long down distance to go situations. We're probably going to need those guys up front to come through for us. So, yeah, one of the Packers wide receivers I mentioned, the other side, kind of my interest is with CMC and Debo. That's kind of it.
Yeah, no, that's very, very straightforward. None of the tight ends outside of Kittle in this matchup. I'm not going to go to Musgrave. Yeah. I mean, DraftKings made a mistake with Kelsey, I think. Like, 6K is just dumb. Like, what do we do? Like, why? Why did we go? Like, he just got 11 targets. What's the purpose of putting him to, like, the Sam Laportas? Like, just keep him at 7K. Like, him being the same price as Zay Flowers is a slap in the face. I'm sorry. Like, the Chiefs throw the ball 45 times, like twice the number of the Baltimore Ravens. And it just doesn't, and they're underdogs too. Like, regardless, that's nor here nor there. That's not the next game we're going to get to. We're actually going to go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers facing off against the Detroit Lions. Last week, I said that the Detroit Lions defense was going to be a better unit. And in the red zone, they did everything I thought they were going to do. They held the McVay offense down. I don't know, some of the play calls from McVay was really interesting, I should say. Like, he had Cooper Kupp run a wheel route on just one-on-one situation with the corner like playing 12 yards off. It's like, let Cooper Kupp use his route running ability. Like, don't just put him on a straight line. Like, that's not how I want to use Cooper Kupp. Regardless, they weren't able to get the job done, and that Detroit Lions defense came up and played a tremendous game. The one thing that was interesting last week, they ran a lot of cover 1 and they blitzed out of it. Like, they came after Matt Stafford. And when I went back and looked at that Tampa Bay game where they obviously throttled them on offense, they didn't really do that to Baker. They just lived in cover 2. They just played a cover 2 zone pretty much the entire game against them. And it was one of those situations where it's like, if they do that again, that opens the door for Rachaad White getting there off of receptions. That opens the door for Cade Otton finding the soft spots, unless he's getting his knee taken out. Obviously Kirby Joseph's hit is one of the more intriguing discussions for everybody, but defenders, where are we supposed to hit them if we can't hit them low and we can't hit them high? Like, you're only supposed to hit them in the middle. But for me, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin have like a 50% target share against cover two, and just too high looks in general. Mike Evans he has 6 touchdowns against it. He leads the league in the on touchdowns against too high looks. If the Lions go back to that too high scheme, I think Mike Evans is the pathway for me. He dropped a 50-yard touchdown, which was very frustrating. And also, I do believe that Detroit plays that cover 2 scheme, because if they go cover 1, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to follow the exact game plan they did last week, where they're just like, we're running mesh. They ran mesh on it. It felt like half of their passing plays, and it worked every single time, because the Eagles corners were running into each other. It was like David Moore, 40-yard touchdown, Trey Palmer, 40-yard touchdown. A lot of it was after the catch, because the Eagles were just an undisciplined unit. Ray Lewis went all off on that Manning show about their tackling, which I agree. They don't team tackle. They just try to individually do it. But overall, though, I think Rachaad White is a fine play, because I think of his reception usage. I would be playing him mainly in a game stack. I'm not playing him as a one-off in this environment. Baker, I do love against the Detroit Lions. I still don't think those corners on the outside can handle Godwin and Mike Evans. Kate Otton's a fine play at tight end with a Baker stack. And then David Moore and Trey Palmer. I lean Trey Palmer because he just plays more free. Like, he just is out there a lot more. But this game has the environment to shoot out, and I do expect it to do that. And I would also like to know, Dave Canales came over from that Seattle staff. That Seattle staff dominated the Lions defense last year, and they also dominated the Lions defense. They dominated the Lions defense this year. Obviously, Tampa Bay didn't get them in their first matchup, but I do believe there's room for them to score this 27 or 28 point shootout game that you want to see. How are you playing this Bucs defense or Bucs offense?
Yeah, Mike Evans is first and foremost for me. And I think you can pair him with Baker. You can play him naked or play him just by himself. And then it's like, if I were to pick out a singular play from this game, it's not Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's not Sam Laporta. It's probably Mike Evans. For the upside versus ownership metrics. And we just got done talking about Mike Evans is 3rd, 4th on the team in expected ownership.
That's
so
ridiculous.
So
if he caught that 50-yard touchdown, he would have been higher.
It'd be a way different story, right?
Yeah.
Mike Evans doesn't feel comfortable in this spot, but Mike Evans has the upside to put up a legitimate 40-point eruption. And I would not be shocked we wake up on Monday morning and Mike Evans is the guy that you needed on the slate.
Yeah. And then from the Lions offensive side, do you have more interest in Goff or Baker?
I have more interest in Baker. To be honest, their passing props are within 20 yards of each other. Baker is the guy more likely to see pass attempts in the red zone. And we know this Detroit Lions team, when they get inside the 10, they want to run the football 4 times in a row. It's just how they're built. So, I think it's Baker for me. I just placed some wagers on Baker over 1.5 touchdown passes, over his passing yardage. I think it's 259 or something. On his overs there, and just pairing it with Mike Evans. And Mike Evans anytime touchdown, Mike Evans over 60 something yards, 72 yards, something like that. Not prohibitive. I think it's Baker for me. I think you can do some interesting things with Baker, Mike Evans, Kate Otton. I think you can do some interesting things with Baker, Rachaad White, Mike Evans, and even Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Typically, we don't play those two together because Chris Godwin needs the volume and Mike Evans is the splash type guy. And typically those things don't hit together. But I think in this spot, if they're pushed backs against the wall, I would see them leaning on their guys. And so pairing them together, I think is fine on the slate.
Makes sense. I don't hate any of those stacks. From the Lions side of the ball, though, who are you most interested in?
I'm honestly most interested in not playing any of them, because if the field is just going to say, look at the composite ownership between Amon-Ra St. Brown, Josh Reynolds, and Jameson Williams, and you're at like 100%. So like the field is telling us that they're going to have one of these guys on every roster and play. It's not going to be that in reality, but that's kind of what the projections are currently telling us. Like the field is heavily interested in this Lions pass attack.
Yeah.
And there is a clear path for like Jahmyr Gibbs to score one on the ground, for Dave Montgomery to score one on the ground, for Amon-Ra to put up 100 yards but not score, for Sam Laporta to score but not put up 100 yards. Like there is a valid path for all of these guys to, and even if they score 28 points, like there's a valid path for none of these guys to be a guy that you had to have on the slate. So if the field is just going to say like one of these guys will be required, I'm just going to say no.
I mean, no, that's fair. For my side of things, we've attacked the Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary all year.
Yeah.
But it should be noted that this defense is much different. They're much healthier. They don't play Zion McCollum, and as a result, they've been just frankly much better. Vita Vea stopped tush push.
Oh my God, that was glorious, dude.
Dude, it was. I mean, did they grab his head and throw him backwards?
Low.
Yeah, but Vita Vea being in there just tells me one thing: if they're capable of stopping the tush push, I don't want David Montgomery. I don't want the bulldozing running back. I do have interest in Gibbs. I think that Gibbs, from an explosion standpoint, can outrun this defense. I do think it's extremely difficult for them to design that, but I do believe he has the ability to do so. And again, if you're telling me that all the receivers are going to be 30%, then I don't think Gibbs is going to get a ton of love. And at running back, like he can do it through the air, do it on the ground, just like James Cook. Like he can do it like any other running back on the slate.
Yeah.
He's game script proof. He just gets touches and he's been phenomenal all year. We do know that Tampa Bay is going to blitz and play cover 3, and that's just how they're going to operate. And it's going to go one of two ways. If they're getting home, they're probably going to generate turnovers. Like I love to play this game as if it fails through Tampa Bay's defense, because again, if Jared Goff gets pressure, Jared Goff's not good. That is how he's been his entire career. They can hold up. Their offensive line is phenomenal. They're totally capable of it. But if Todd Bowles gets after them, there could be some issues. If they don't, that means Jameson Williams is a guy that I'll play. Like I know that he's 30%. I understand that he's very popular. He's going to be down the field though at 3,600. It's not going to take a ton. It also allows you the flexibility to get to the McCaffreys and different things like that. Obviously, the Packers receivers would still be in play for me. Like if I go Baker, White, Mike Evans, run it back with JMO, go McCaffrey and play Christian Watson. Christian Watson's my path. Like Christian Watson is going to get he's not going to be played. So like that is how I get unique. I do agree with you on the Packers receivers, but if I do play a Lion, I'll probably be playing a Packer, which is really funny. If Sam Laporta stays at the ownership level that he's at, I will be playing him in a Baker stack. Like people do realize he had the second most points, fantasy points against cover 3 coverage this year. He had 6 touchdowns against cover 3. Like this dude finds the end zone. He found it last week. I don't know how he made his knee okay enough to play as much as he did and be as effective as he was, but he did. And I'm just going to treat him as if he's healthy. I don't care that he's questionable. He played last week. He should play this week. And he was phenomenal last week. He absolutely destroyed. I mean, they attacked him the whole game. The Lions did. Huck, I can't think of his name. The number 94 linebacker on the Rams.
Oh, yeah.
Outside backer. They went at him the entire game. Like, if they find a matchup they like, they're going to stick to it. So if you see that early on in the game, like, expect them to go that way. That is how Johnson operates. And in that first matchup, obviously, Amon-Ra killed it. Amon-Ra is really good. I do agree with you. At the cost, though, it's just not pretty there. So let's move forward to the final game of the slate. We've got the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Buffalo Bills. I know you alluded to this game not having a clear path to shooting out. I think this game has a clear path of where the volume's going.
Sure.
And that is where I would be like, from the Chiefs side of the ball, starting with them, Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce have like a 60% target share, it feels like. Like they
Yeah.
are just getting the ball to them. They like Mahomes doesn't care about anybody else. And the Bills' injuries just are piling up right now. They have a lot of key guys missing. It's a spot where the Chiefs are 3-point underdogs. They're on the road. Mahomes has never played with this. Mahomes has never played in the Bills Stadium with fans. Like, how crazy does that sound? They've played all their games in Kansas City pretty much. They've played in Buffalo, I believe, once so far. Like, it's a weird thing where they haven't played in this environment, and it's going to be a new test for them. But as a result, like, I'm going to bet on their stars. If I bet on Mahomes, I'm betting on Rashee Rice, and I'm betting on Travis Kelce. Those two have to step up for him. I'm not going to try to get cute and play one of McCole Hardman or MVS or any of the other random pieces with the Chiefs. If Mahomes is going to get there, it's going to be through their two clear-cut guys. And then I guess for me, I'll just go on and say the Bills side of the ball. Stephon Diggs has a foot injury that's weird to come up when it has. He's questionable. It's one of those things that McDermott said he would be limited in Friday's practice at best.
Yeah.
That's a weird thing to say. Khalil Shakir took over the full role of Gabe Davis pretty much, except for he didn't run the deep routes, Diggs did, and he just operated as a lot of those low A-dot plays. The main guys on the Bills I'm excited about, Dalton Kincaid and James Cook. I think the clear plan will be attack the linebackers of the Chiefs. The way you attack the linebackers is with running backs and tight ends. Last time they matched up, Spagnuolo said screw it and put a corner on James Cook for the second half. So this time around, if they throw the corner, I think you got to get Kincaid on the linebacker out wide and just let him play in space. Hilo, how are you approaching this Chiefs-Bills game?
I think the most interesting piece to me is Isaiah Pacheco. We look at this Bills defense, and they have been very, very bipolar against the run. I don't know if that's PC to say, but they have been like, they are near the top of the league in yards allowed before contact, as in the fewest.
Yeah.
But they are still allowing like 4.6 yards per carry. And why is that? Is because they are allowing, if a running back gets into the second level, they are allowing, because they play heavy rates of nickel package, they're allowing some splash runs against. So their explosive rush rate allowed is amongst the worst in the league. Now you look at this Bills injury report, it's like Tyrell Dotson's on it, Terrell Bernard, Christian Benford, and these are all guys that didn't start the year starting in the linebacking unit. Balin Spector is also on the injury report. You look at the secondary, Taylor Rapp, Rasul Douglas, Taron Johnson, they're all on the injury report. Some of those guys might play. A lot of them are not going to play. You alluded to the fact that they're banged up. So if you're talking about the fact that this Bills defense is already struggling with explosive runs allowed, now you're adding in all these linebacker, all these safety injuries. It's like, I'm immediately drawn to Isaiah Pacheco. What you need for Isaiah Pacheco is you need one of his 15-yard runs, because there's probably going to be a couple of them. You need one of those 15-yard runs to turn into a 40-yard touchdown. And if that happens, then Isaiah Pacheco has a very clear path to 100 yards on the ground and a score, which places him in the optimal discussion at his price. So he is very, very interesting to me. I would not be surprised to see the Chiefs just establish the hell out of it. Because one, the matchup kind of lends to that. And two, they have been the pass heaviest, as far as pass rate over expectation goes, team in the league this season. The Bills also know this. So if I'm trying to come into Buffalo and steal a win and go to the AFC Championship game, I might be focusing on Isaiah Pacheco here. That's all speculation. That's all complete conjecture. But if I am sitting in Andy Reid's shoes, I'm looking at this matchup, looking at it, how it lays out on paper, watching the film. I'm like, I'm going to give Isaiah Pacheco 16 carries in the first half and see what happens. Fuck it. Let's go. That's kind of how I would be approaching this situation. We kind of saw that last week. The Chiefs gave Isaiah Pacheco 9 carries in the first quarter. He ended with 24 carries against the Miami Dolphins for 89 yards and a score. I would not be surprised to see a repeat of that this week. I don't remember where Isaiah Pacheco's ownership is expected to be. I'm going to check that out real quick while I'm rambling.
I got it for you. It's third right now. It's like it's him. And I mean, I think that's wrong. Like personally, I think James Cook is going to be more popular. I don't believe that James Cook is going to be less popular than Isaiah Pacheco as an at-home favorite of a guy who almost went for 100 in their first matchup.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he had 5 targets in the first half. Yeah, had like 89 yards.
He had 2 receiving touchdowns.
Yeah.
Like he killed their linebackers. Like that's again. L'Jarius Sneed had the post of against Tyreek Hill. He said he pressed me to Cancun.
Yeah, I saw that. That was awesome.
And like that's
that video was great.
Game. Like I mean that's how Tyreek Hill operates. L'Jarius Sneed is just difference maker, man. But yeah, I like Pacheco. I don't like Pacheco with Mahomes. There's people who want to play that because of his targets.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't. On this slate, I don't want to correlate him to the quarterback like I would with some of the other guys because I don't believe he's going to get a ton of catches. I do believe that you are right on the carry side of things because he didn't play in their first matchup. And he was coming off a game against Green Bay, 18 for 110. Like he has big rushing games with low volume. And that was, I think, the highest volume he got all year last week. So you're right on that front. I think I should be higher on Pacheco than I maybe was before. And I should be looking at that game like a Pacheco Dalton Kincaid mini. Just sounds nice. Sounds unique. A running back tight end in a game that's not Kelsey and James Cook.
Yeah. The other piece that's interesting to play around with adding to Isaiah Pacheco is the Kansas City Chiefs defense. Typically, I don't correlate a defense with a running back because the field just does it more than it hits. But in this case, I think it's very, very interesting. If they correlate well because of what it means for putting the ball more in Josh Allen's hands through the air, which if this Kansas City Chiefs team wants to win, they're going to have to force turnovers, which then directly correlates to increased rushing expectation for Pacheco. So I think it's interesting. I don't normally do that again, like I said, but I don't get the sense that the field is going to be doing that this week. So I think it's totally fine.
That makes sense. That's all I've got. Kyler, do you have anything else you'd like to say or?
Nope. Wrapping now, dude.
Perfect. Thank you guys for tuning into the Cover 5 podcast. It's been a fun ride this season. We will be back next week to break down the last main slate of the season. It'll be conference championship time. Hoping these games stay a lot closer than they are projected. I want some fun playoff matchups. I want to watch them similar to the way that Hilo watched the Packers matchup last week, and just all of like, I can't believe this one's really happening. See you guys. Have a good one.